line with what we've been doing on Fridays, often going into the weekend. They're big sports events. Tomorrow, of course, Springboks against the All Blacks at Ellis Park. And we've been talking the sports business. Now, that business yields very high returns for sponsors, for many of the people involved. Many of the sportsmen, though, and apparently there's research that said 65% of them go bankrupt after they quit the limelight. James Monteith is MD of the Sport Industry Group in South Africa, and he joins us now for more. Morning, James. That 65% bankrupt is perhaps a strong term, but it does sound like a low number for the number of sportsmen who do very well and make a lot of money while they're playing, and then it all disappears.
Absolutely. I would have thought that 65 is actually probably a bit low. We've got to remember that very, very few sports stars actually make it to the top levels of their sport. If you take the South African market, and as an example, we've got 300,000 rugby players in the country. That's taking juniors and seniors as well. But there are only 6 franchises and a couple of first division sides. Yeah. Not everyone makes it to the top level of that sport. So first of all, you've got few numbers coming in. You've also got a situation where a lot of these sports stars, that's their career. That's what they focus on. They haven't been to university. They don't have something to fall back on when their careers come to an end. And a sports star's career is often limited. You know, there are very, very few sports stars over the age of 35 that are still earning significant amounts of money. I'm not saying that there aren't any, but there are very, very few of them. I think the biggest problem that we have is one of life skills and development. We've got to remember that, particularly with soccer and sports like boxing, these athletes have started from a very, very young age. They haven't been to university. They don't have the knowledge or the investment know-how in order to secure their financial future.
But James, my thinking is that when a huge sports star gets a millions dollar worth or million rands worth of an endorsement deal, whether it's for cosmetics or opening up some kind of franchise, or we all remember Francois Pienaar, hey, with the Lay's advert and the chips there. Exactly. Who needs to take responsibility for that? You're giving them, you're throwing money at them. Shouldn't you be educating them as to how well to manage their finances?
I suppose the question is, when you say you educating them, who?
Well, that is exactly it. And quite a number of sports governing bodies in this country are quite forward-thinking when it comes to issues like, the long-term sustainability of their careers once they finish playing. If you take, for example, rugby, and I know soccer have similar policies in place, whereby you cannot become a player agent or a player manager unless you are officially accredited by SARU. It's an IRB directive, and in order to be accredited as an agent or a manager, you have to have certain basic training. And I would imagine part of that is life skills and imparting financial knowledge to your athletes. Boxing, on the other hand, the last figure I saw, you could pay 550 Rand and become a licensed boxing manager. You don't need any qualifications. So you are now managing the career of someone, but you don't necessarily have the skills to impart to them.
Well, just pause with James here. And joining us from our Cape Town studios is DONNE COMMINS, who is Managing Director and Athlete Manager at Big Sports Management. We've just been setting out the problem here, DONNE, of so many sports stars, many of them very young. Tennis stars and swimmers are often in their teens. I'd say it's mostly people in their 20s. How are you going about sorting out this problem and trying to guide them so that they don't blow it all before they're 30?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Athletes have two retirements in their lives, one when they finish playing their sport and one at retirement age. And we really need to make sure that they all have a plan. Some of them just don't have a plan, or they have a very bad plan, or they don't stick to the plan. So it's our responsibility to make sure that they have good financial advisors. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a financial advisor, but they need to have good financial advisors, and they need to stick to the plan and listen.
James, let's touch on a nice example that we've got here, and research recently done on baby Jake Matlala, well-known and world-renowned boxing champion in South Africa. But unfortunately, things went terribly wrong for him. He fell ill and lost a lot of his money, tried to open up a business here and there, but that didn't succeed too well. Where would you say that kind of problem stems from? Well,
boxers don't necessarily make the best business people. They haven't had the training, they don't necessarily have the skills of entrepreneurship. Baby Jake is an interesting case, but similarly there are as many cases on the other end of the scale as well. I mean, you look at someone like Lucas Radebe, had a phenomenal career playing for Leeds, playing for Bafana Bafana. Lucas is a successful businessman now. But I think the difference there was he realized that it wasn't necessarily his skills that were going to get him where he needed to get. So he employed the services of a business manager, an agent, a legal expert and a financial advisor that formed a company around him called the Lucas Radebe brand business, and they managed that for him.
Just listening to you talk about those advisors, Donne, and one thinks particularly of the tennis players who move around the circuit with like 15 or 20 people in their trail, legal advisors, investment advisors. I suppose the danger also is that you've got unscrupulous people who will take advantage of sportsmen precisely because they are inexperienced, they're ignorant, and of course appeal to their vanity. So you could have some sharp people making a lot of money out of them as well.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to strike a balance. But people have been making money from sport for a while now. So there's some established companies that have got good reputations, and I think within a short period of time, an athlete's going to work out whether they can trust the financial advisor, the lawyer, the people that are hanging around them. But yeah, I mean, it's actually quite tragic. That's one of the main reasons why a lot of the basketball players in the States have lost their fortunes, is from unscrupulous advisors.
Mm-hmm. But James, if that's been a problem for so long now, what are we doing to solve it, in particular on a local front, when it comes to our local sporting guys?
Well, I think that we need to have policies and procedures in place from national level, where SASCOC govern sport in the country, right the way down into the individual federations. I find it crazy that, for example, rugby and soccer have these policies in place that you cannot be an agent unless you've been accredited, whereas other sports don't. I think that we need standardization with respect to the laws governing the awarding of licenses to managers, to agents, to promoters.
Donne, what about success stories? One thinks of an Ernie Els. He seems to have been managing his wealth well. On the other hand, he has considerable wealth. He earns in dollars. One just thinks of the American golf tour, talking of golf, where half of them miss the cut every Friday. A lot of them sleep in their cars. Phil Mickelson and Jack Nicklaus and the likes at the top are not the story of those professional golfers, and they are the cream. Who have you come across in South Africa that really has got this right?
Well, I think James is right. Lucas Radebe has done very well. Mark Boucher's just retired now, and he's set himself up. He listened. Yeah, Jacques Callis, it depends. They've all been around. It depends on the duration of their careers. It depends on the amount of money that they've earned. Yeah, James is right. That Lucas Radebe is probably a prime example.
James, let's take a look at the fundraising aspect. Usually, like a typical case like Baby Maklala, he fell ill and then started up some fundraising organization for him to raise funds for his medical expenses. With regard to that, that's almost like a second opportunity to get money, but you still don't know how to handle it. How do they handle tax issues with regard to that? Because they get a lot of money from endorsement deals, don't spend it appropriately, maybe not even pay tax, and then get more money when it comes to fundraisers, and you're still in the same problem.
Also,
David?
the problem is they are so prominent. Absolutely. That the receiver of revenue, SARS, is going to take an immediate interest in them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we hear all of the time of these lifestyle audits. And if you look at some of the football players in this country, their lifestyles are very flashy. They make it to the Premier Division, the first thing they do is they buy an M3 or a GTI because there's a status associated with being in the limelight as well. So it's quite difficult to dodge the receiver. Particularly because of things like lifestyle audits, and they do live flashy lifestyles. But back to your point of, they're getting a second bite at the cherry. It's more the exception. I think that there are countless numbers of athletes out there who don't have the opportunities and didn't maybe have the name that a Baby Jake has, who are able to appeal to people's good nature in order to actually raise funds when they do land on hard times.
Yeah, a serious problem, needs a lot of thought. Thanks to James Monteith, Managing Director of the Sport Industry Group in South Africa, and Donne Commins, who's a Managing Director and Athlete Manager at Big SPORTSMEN.